Very beautiful morning today. Today we're going to talk about hunting in game preserves. Have you ever hunted in a game preserve or thought about it? It's definitely a different experience if you're used to hunting in the mountains like I am, kind of like in the area that I am right now. My wife wanted to shoot a deer and she didn't want to take the hunter safety course and put all the time and effort into it. So we started out at the local range with the 30-30 till she became very proficient. She could get about a 2 to 3 inch group at 100 yards, and that's plenty for the Pennsylvania woods. Most of the shots in the areas that I'm in are usually 50 yards or less. Sometimes you'll get some 100 yarders, but not much further than that. For the summer, I looked around for the best price at some of the preserves. I booked a hunt early October. It was still kind of warm. And it was about a 2.5 hour ride up there, and I wasn't really sure what to expect. It was pretty interesting pulling in on his property. He had a lot of elk out in the pastures. He had a 10-foot high fence around, and they were just out there eating like cows. So his property, where the preserve was down the road about 20 minutes. And it actually was in a populated area. It was I believe he had a 50 acre square. He had a double fence. He had an 8-foot high on the front, and he had a 10-foot high in the back. So he had 2 gates. You would drive in there, go through the first one, go through the second one. The second fence was a containment fence in case he had a tree come down on the interior fence. None of his animals would escape. They would get stuck in the middle between them 2 fences. So on his preserve, he had bull elk, cow elk, he had Russian boar, and then he had pretty much any kind of rack you wanted to shoot. When you harvest a buck on a preserve, you get paid by the inch, so you could end up with a 110-inch buck all the way up to 160 plus, which may cost you $14,000 or $15,000. It is very expensive to hunt a preserve. Basically, you pay by the inch. He did a lot of farming on the side too. He had a lot of farm equipment. They talked to him for a little while. I forget how much money that he would pay per acre to rent other people's property to grow crops on their land. So he had a lot of irons in the fire, as many farmers do. But that was his other business on the side. And then every year he would raffle some of his elk hunts off at the local school. I believe an elk cow was about $2,000, which is a lot of meat. An elk is usually about 600 pounds for a cow. About 2 to 600 depending upon how old it was. And they would auction those off. So the owner had a lot of stands out. If you were an archery hunter, you would only be about 10 feet off the ground. He had lock-ons everywhere. And then if you had a gun, you would have to sit in one of his stands. You couldn't shoot from the ground because he wanted you to shoot down. He had a winery behind him. And then when you came in, there was a bunch of houses behind his property also. So he was kind of in the middle there, which kind of caught me off guard. How we started to hunt was he had a walkie-talkie and his wife had one. She had an orange hat, orange vest. And we dropped her off at the gate and we went to the middle of the property. And then he would call her on the walkie-talkie to start walking the fence. So she would walk the outside perimeter of it. And after about 30 minutes, about 200 buck came out and stood in front of us. There was antlers going everywhere. He looked like a caribou migration you would see on the tundra. And in the back, there were some mixed-in elk. My wife didn't want to shoot into all those animals and hit one of them. And then we would have to pay a lot of money for one of the other animals that we hit by mistake. She handed me the 30-30. And the herd went past us, and then we moved over to the next stand, and I had a doe down in less than 5 minutes. He pulled out his Leatherman with his little tiny blade. I always have a big knife hanging on me. There's a moral to this story. So he cut the doe out with his Leatherman. He didn't even get dirty. That was the fastest field dressing job I ever saw. 10 minutes flat. Pulled some paper towels out of his truck, cleaned himself up. Threw the deer in the truck and away we went. The moral of that story is you don't need a big knife to field dress. Now I carry one that's about this big. I do have a video on that replaceable blade knife I do carry now. He did a nice job dressing that doe out, and as quick as he did, I've never seen anybody clean one out that fast. But he did have some wild pigs on his property, which I really wanted to shoot. And I didn't see that on his website, but he told me that when he got there. He had 15 wild boars in that fence, but they must have went around her and they've never showed up because I really wanted to drop one of them too. But so we ended up with a doe, and It was very peculiar looking. It had a very long nose. To me, anytime you see a doe that has a long nose, it's very old. How much does it cost to feed a doe per year? Generally about $500. They're eating alfalfa pellets. They're eating baled grass, and they're probably eating baled alfalfa that he's cutting out of his field, and then he's feeding them. Generally, when they feed them, they have a tripod feeder. He had big bins, and he would dump the pellets into the bins, or he would put the cut alfalfa in there, and then they would eat them. I'm not sure how many pounds of food $200 to $300 and a small herd of elk can eat, and the wild pigs running around in there, but it's probably a lot. So the meat I got from the doe, I got about 30 pounds of venison from it. It had a very strange flavor. Basically, you taste it like alfalfa pellets. So I put it in the freezer, and I didn't touch that till about a year to a year and a half later. And I did another sample test, and most of that flavor was gone from it aging in the freezer. It had like a sagey taste. If you had sausage meat at the butcher shop, they have a tendency to put too much sage in there. That's what the meat tasted like. So generally, when you shoot a deer, especially in the mountains like this, they eat a lot of acorns, and that makes the meat taste very gamey. If you live in an ag area, they'll eat a lot of corn, and their meat will actually taste closer to beef. It doesn't have a gamey flavor. I've cooked some of the meat and taken it to my coworkers at work, and they had no idea that it was venison because it didn't have that gamey flavor. So if you've ever hunted in a preserve, leave me a comment down in the comment section. What preserve you hunt on? Do you hunt there every year? And what's an average hunt cost you? So is hunting on a preserve actually hunting? It has its pros and its cons. I don't think I would ever go back and shoot a deer. If I would ever go to a preserve, I think I want to hunt a wild boar. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. It helps other people see it. If you're new to this channel, hit that subscribe button to help my channel grow. And we will see you on the next video. Thanks for watching PA Timber Ghost.